There is a new report that the U.S. is prepared to go it alone when it comes to North Korea. The question is, what's next for the rogue nation? How do we handle it? Joining us now, former advisor to President George W. Bush, Brad Blakeman, and former U.S. Army Intelligence Officer Andrew Peek. Brad, Andrew, good to see both of you.
Same. Good to see you.
I'll begin with you, Andrew. What's your take on what the North Koreans are doing and what they're going to do in the near future?
I think the North Koreans are pushing this situation towards a crisis, and I think the Trump administration is ready to meet them head on. You know, what we're looking at right now is something called secondary sanctions, which is sanctions against Chinese or other companies that invest in North Korea, not necessarily North Korea itself. This is something we've had in place on the Iranians for about 2 decades, and they're extraordinarily helpful. However, if those don't work, I expect the Trump administration to push further, perhaps into some kind of unilateral action that gets a resolution to this situation.
Well, Brad, that's going to include the Chinese. It has to. And we seem to be still taking that diplomatic route right now, but talks pressure on preferred methods of dealing with them. I mean, what are, at this point, Brad, really our military options if sanctions once again fail against North Korea?
Well, I think it's the two-pronged approach. One is using economic duress on China. China is the enabler of North Korea. North Korea could not exist a week without China's help. Is that a military
option, Brad? A military option?
I think there's got to be both. There's got to be a military option with increasing our presence in South Korea, with perhaps even nuclear weapons on the peninsula in South Korea. If it gets to that, it means putting more ships in the Pacific Rim. It means beefing up our military presence in Japan. And also our deterrence with military equipment in South Korea. There's a lot we can do that we haven't done because Barack Obama basically had a hands-off policy in that area of the world, and China exploited that both economically and militarily.
And Andrew, if our success with China proves to be very limited, how do we work with South Korea? How do we work with Japan to try to contain North Korea, or do we act unilaterally, as this Wall Street Journal report says?
Right. Well, as you point out, the Chinese are only going to be so helpful. They like that North Korea is an issue that causes us to go to China and ask for help and to make concessions in other areas. They're only going to help us in North Korea if they see the geopolitical environment shifting against them. Thus, every time North Korea launches a missile, I would make some gesture of security cooperation towards Iran, towards South Korea and Japan, i.e. selling them fighter jets, giving them anti-missile defenses, or some other kind of deterrent action to increase their defensive posture.
Brad, I asked you about military options, but there is an interesting economic option on the table that seems to be discussed among officials. That's the fact that you go to these nearly 24 Chinese banks that have been accused of funneling money to the North Koreans. I mean, the North Koreans have been at this for a long time. Do you think that the Chinese will cooperate on the banking level at least?
They won't cooperate. They'll have to be led to cooperation through sanctions. And let's face it, some of the biggest banks in the world are located in China. And if we start putting the screws to the Chinese banks and they start hurting their GDP and their ability to do business around the world, they're going to come to their senses. No American president to date has put the kind of pressure that is needed on North Korea, and I think Trump's just what the doctor ordered.
We will end it there. I like the way you answer that. Brad, Andrew, thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, great way to end it.